Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, Attention and ADHD coach Jeff Copper, and we're here today with Dr. Roberto Olivardia. Dr. Olivardia, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
I can usually say it once right. I trip over the second time. I don't know why. Anyway, in some separate conversations with you, you brought up the notion of arming children, and your son in a situation, with what you call an ignorance protection plan, which was fascinating to me because you kind of told a little bit of a story about your son. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So for parents who have a child in special education for learning differences, learning disabilities, they're put on an IEP, an individualized education plan, which outlines services that they are entitled to. And when you have a diagnosis of something like dyslexia or any learning difference for that matter, I say to parents that your child needs an IPP, an ignorance protection plan. And I, as a parent, when my son was diagnosed with dyslexia in kindergarten, right before first grade, I sat with him and I said, look, there's this thing called dyslexia. It's not a shame to use the word because that's what it is. And I said, and some people are going to think that you're not smart because of this, but they're wrong. That's not the case. And some people are going to be surprised because his verbal skills were through the roof, that people associate people with good verbal skills with being good readers. And I said, and that's not always true. And we role played, like what would happen if someone said, oh, you're stupid because you can't read, or if someone says, what do you mean you can't read? And he did it with me and we role played. And Jeff, one of the proudest moments I think I've had, you know, as a parent, literally 2 weeks after that conversation with my son, he came out of school, I picked him up, he said, Dad, he goes, we were in music class and we were given these lyrics to the song, and he was a non-reader at that point, and he said, he turned to the girl next to him and said, do you mind reading these words? And she said, you can't read them? And I said to him that sometimes, you know, people aren't always mean. They're just surprised. And he said very casually, oh, no, I have this thing. It's called dyslexia. Walt Disney had it. And he mentioned other celebrities. The 3 of the sharks on Shark Tank have it. And it just makes reading difficult, but I'm working on it. And she went, oh, okay. And then she read the words. And to me, Jeff, that was a pivotal moment where his self-esteem could have been shattered had he not had some just way of dealing with that, because the reality is, and I understand parents they want to protect their children, that sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to use the D word, the dyslexia word. I don't want my child to feel different. Well, they are different, but who says that different is bad and defective? We don't want different to equal defect. We want different to equal wonderful. We want different to be special, and that you can thrive with that. So I think every child needs to have their IPP.
And you know, it's funny because when we were preparing this interview, we were talking about the ignorance protection plan, and I was thinking, like, well, if you're a parent, you're like, you got to buy into this. It's a great concept, but what is it? Because you're like, would you just kind of give it to us? And I think, because I was thinking about what we would say, but it's really an individual type thing that you've got to interact with your child, because it's got to be natural to them. So it's not like we could give you a script or something like that, other than you can certainly search for dyslexic or ADHD or learning disability, because there's long lists of them, and there's always somebody there that you can kind of point to with some stuff. But I think the languaging of some of that stuff is as individual as the child is. And so as much as we'd like to script that stuff out for you, I think it would be a disservice, because you'd have this great idea and you'd go and it's just not going to work because of the individual. But the point of this really is it reframes it in a positive light, and it prepares the child or adolescent or sometimes young adult what to do before it actually happens, and so they pull it out of their pocket, and it really makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, that being proactive in that way, and then you're not thrown by those situations, and now you know that you possess the right knowledge, and that when you're met with a myth or a misperception, you can speak to it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on with that tip. We appreciate it.
Sure, anytime.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition. Please subscribe to Attention Talk Video. We release tips on ADHD, learning disabilities, and dyslexia each week. Take care.